All right. We are live. Now we have nothing to say.
You have to promise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Bod, a podcast that tells the story of what it means to be a dad today, one dad at a time. My name is Sean, and I'm a dad living in New York City with my wife and our two young native New Yorkers. The formula for the Dad Bod is simple. Each episode, we're going to interview one dad to get his story of being a dad. Over time, all of these stories will start to create the bigger story of what it means to be a dad today. The dads that we interview will be regular, everyday dads. And one requirement for every interviewee is that they recommend another dad that they think would be great for the show. I think we'll start to see a pretty cool Dad Bod tree start to take shape after a while. So to get this thing started, I invited Brian, my best friend from our childhood days in Phoenix, to be the first guest. Brian currently lives in LA with his wife and their two daughters, ages 11 and 8. Even though we live on opposite coasts and struggle to find time to even catch up over the phone, we were actually able to do this interview live and in person in Austin, Texas, where we met for our annual Best Buds trip. Big thanks to our wives for supporting this trip every year. I had a great time interviewing Brian. As you'll notice from background noise in the audio, we did the first part of the interview in the car on our way to San Antonio for the Spurs game, and the second part of the interview at the airport while waiting for our flights. In our conversation, Brian shared some really great insights from his life as a girl dad, especially from his experience coaching his two girls' basketball teams. On this topic, I really appreciate, and I think you will too, how open and honest Brian was in evaluating his own performance as a coach. Although he's talking about coaching his daughter, what Brian shares is very relatable to the experience of parenting in general. We also get into the topic of money and the wisdom and perspective that Brian is trying to pass on to his daughters, as well as Brian's reflections on his own dad's parenting. Brian also shares some practical notes and perspective about how he maintains his dad bod and how he's still playing basketball in his 40s. As you'll hear, Brian's still getting lots of buckets, so I try to stir up some controversy to see if he thinks he should be the league MVP. Okay, enough talking now. Let's get to episode number 1. Brian, Coach Girl Dad. Give me an intro. Who are you?
Okay.
Give me your little bio. Let's get some context.
All right. Great. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Sean, if I can call you that. My name is Brian, and I'm a father of two girls. I'm a girl dad, ages 11 and 8. Live in Pasadena, California. So married with 2 kids. I'm an optometrist, so professional. We own our practice, so we're like small business owners also.
What do you like about being a girl dad?
I don't know what it's like to have boys, but it's funny because we thought we would want one of each, and then we got 2, and quite happy with how life turned out. I like the sweetness of girls, the fact that they're different than us. I really love, and actually learning, because when we were boys, we didn't know, I see these kids don't know how to interact with the opposite sex, right?
Yeah.
So when we were kids, we don't know how to have fun, how to joke, how to play with girls.
Right.
So that's something that's a little bit different, right?
Right. So what's been surprising for you as a girl dad? Are you doing stuff that you didn't kind of realize you'd be doing?
I think where it comes in the most is with sports. I coach soccer. I don't know anything about soccer. I've coached softball when we dabbled with that, because I liked being around my kids and the other kids too. It's just a fun way of being with them.
Yeah.
Doing something and teaching something. So I did it, just for enjoyment.
So what? Give me the details. What teams have you coached? What are you coaching now? Which sports?
Yeah, the 2 sports I know the most is basketball and volleyball.
You played?
Yes, yeah. So I played a lot of basketball growing up, and then highest level was high school varsity, and then just kept playing. I've been playing it through adulthood. I paused a little bit when I had kids and when they were young, like I didn't feel right just going to the gym and playing basketball for fun.
Yeah.
I felt okay going to work out, to exercise, but I didn't feel right to just
too much enjoyment. You're enjoying yourself too much.
Yeah, too much enjoyment, too much time.
Yeah.
Because it could be like, oh, you're waiting for your spot on the court, and then you're winning, and then you're like want to keep playing because you're winning, but then you have this guilt about not being home and not helping with the little kids, like especially when they're small. On the flip side, I think also the positive thing though is like men, we need outlets and enjoyment too, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just like be like, oh, I'm a dad and so I can't do anything fun.
Yeah.
Like, so, when possible, it is good, right, to hang out with your friends or
definitely
or play basketball, for example.
Yeah.
Because it's good for your mental and like social health.
So now you're playing again, right?
Yeah, still playing. Yeah, so now that the kids are older, then I'm like just more free to be able to play and I'm not missing as much at home. And then it's really great because it keeps me active, and so for me I can't just play basketball. I have to train, otherwise I have no wind. I don't have enough cardio to run back and forth on the court. So I'm forced to do cardio because I wouldn't normally do that. I wouldn't just go pound the pavement or hit the treadmill just because.
You didn't used to do cardio, right? I don't think of you as somebody who does cardio.
Correct, yeah. I was active enough that I didn't need to. That's just the act of playing or practicing is enough. And now I have to. Yeah.
Because, you have to because you want to, like, be good at basketball.
Correct. Yeah, like, because I'm... when I first started playing, let's say in 2018, I was playing in a 35 and older league. I think I just had hit 35. And, like, literally just a few times down the court, I'm already dying. I'm, like, sucking wind.
Yeah.
And then secondly, when in basketball, like, if you don't have your wind, like, you see the ball and you're like, I can't jump.
Right.
Or, like, because if you just can't, or you see a loose ball and you, like, can't get to it.
Yeah.
And not even because you don't, like, physically can't jump or physically can't lunge. It's that there's no energy there to make that move.
Yep.
So you have to have your wind in order to elevate or to make sudden, quick movements.
So are you, like, how often are you working out nowadays?
Let's see. I probably do cardio 2, maybe 3 times a week, and then lifting maybe 3 times a week. So it's like maybe doing something active, maybe 6 days a week. Yeah.
So cardio treadmill usually?
I do 2 versions. Like I'll run outside as a cardio. I'll run a mile or to 2 miles. And then sometimes I vary myself. Like I'll do kind of interval. So I'll like speed up to get to that bridge. Okay. And then kind of slow it down, or there's shade there, just to kind of like challenge myself, just so it's not like the single pace. Yeah. Because basketball's not like that. And then, or I'll like so my gym is maybe half a mile from my home. Okay. So I always run to the gym. Okay. Like I never drive there. So I'll get a like mini cardio before I'm even at the gym. Yeah. And then
So how would you compare, like, are you in, how good a shape are you in relative to like other stages in your life? And also forgot to ask or have you say, how old are you?
I am 42.
42.
Yeah.
Just over the hill. So how do you feel, like, compare yourself with different phases, let's say like 35, 28, 22. Yeah. Right. How do you compare with Brian of those years?
Yeah. At the moment, I'm actually really happy with where I am. I'm like, I feel physically more fit than I've been in like a decade, maybe.
That's awesome.
Yeah. With cardio and just like working out, like you were saying the other day, like vanity, like a lot of it truly is that. Yes. Some of it's like boxing out. You need some strength. You don't want to be like too frail or too light or too weak. Yep. But just wanting to look good and like fight that dad bod. Yeah. Like I see it. We all see it. Like we have a harder, metabolism, all that. But it's like I don't want to succumb to a gut. a pot belly if I don't have to have that.
Gotta fight it.
Yeah, so within my power, if I can do something about it, I'll try.
Yeah.
And I'm in a stage of my life where work-wise I don't have to work so many hours, so that does free up more time to be able to work out more.
So if you were to draft a team, you were to pick, you were drafting a team, and you had you today on the board available, or you from 5 years ago available, and you from 10 years ago available. Who are you picking?
Oh, basketball-wise?
Basketball team.
Oh, yeah. Me, 10 years was probably a peak. So around 30, I was still really... So I was in Phoenix briefly, so I played in that volleyball league.
Yeah.
And, I still think about it. I still had my hops.
Yeah.
And I could still do what I want to do physically.
Yeah.
So 30 was still a really good age athletically. So that's probably peak, actually, because then I had that wisdom or the experience of knowing how to play basketball and volleyball. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when I was 30, I could play middle position, which is I never played it before, but I loved middle because I could hit left, right, or middle.
That's awesome.
So I had 3 options, and I could see the court better.
Yeah.
But I never knew that when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then basketball, 30, is a good age because of you've played so much ball now. So if I'm at LA Fitness and I'm playing 20-year-olds, they're flying around the court and they're amazing, and I'm really impressed that they can dribble and shoot like Steph Curry, but they also don't know how to play quite as well. Mm-hmm. So then a 30-year-old has advantage over a 20-year-old with your brain, basically.
Yeah. So it was a peak. You were still very athletic. You still had your bounce.
Yeah.
And you had also a little bit more wisdom, or some more wisdom than you did when you were younger.
Yes.
So it was a kind of perfect. So when do you feel like you lost your bounce, or what was?
Yeah, probably around 35. It's probably different for everyone. But where your burst isn't there anymore. You want it, and it's not. You ask your body to sprint, and it's got a third gear, but it doesn't have a fourth or fifth gear.
Yeah.
And then clearly for basketball, volleyball, not having the vertical, that's very easy to see. I can't touch that anymore.
Yeah.
And then it ain't coming back. You can't train it to come back. I don't think. You could just stem the tide a little bit, but I think the burst and the vertical is not coming back.
Yeah, I don't feel so bad for you. I didn't have it anyways, so I didn't. You're lucky to have had it.
Yeah,
I never had that burst or vertical.
One thing I wanted to say about 42 is so I'm still playing basketball at 42. I play with 35 to let's say 50-year-olds. So what's gratifying is grading on a curve, and your own curve and relative to other people. So that is a nice challenge, a little report card you give yourself, oh, I'm doing well for my age. I know how old these guys are.
Right. You're I can keep up. I'm keeping up
exactly.
with these slightly younger guys.
Yeah, so
much younger guys.
Even though you're a diminished version of yourself, you know that, and you accept that reality, and you're hey, I'm okay. I'm playing well. Of course I'm not jumping, and I'm not, doing things athletically that I used to. But I know that I'm still doing it, and I know that a lot of my peers are no longer playing basketball.
Yeah.
So I know I'm ahead of the game still. I'm always counting my points. I want to win, but I know how many points I have. It's not a lot, but I've hit.
No, it's a lot. How many?
Yeah.
What's your highest scoring game this season?
So this season I've had a bunch of 20s. I'm always happy if I can get. At first I was I want to get double digits, and I'd be happy with that. Now my what I'm happy with is 20 makes me really happy.
Okay.
So I had 27, I think.
Okay.
And then I was thinking back, my whole life, I think I hit 31 one time JV basketball. So it's a lot of points.
Yeah.
And a lot of buckets. Or last week, I counted. I think I made 10 baskets. So I'm that's pretty good. That's a lot of. Yeah.
20. So 20. Just to put it into context, 27 points How many, like, and these games are 4 10-minute quarters?
Probably 4 8-minute quarters.
4 8-minute quarters. So just 32 minutes of basketball. So how many points, what was the final score of the game?
Yeah, maybe in the 60s.
In the 60s. Probably, so you scored like 45% of the points for your team. Were you the high scorer for the game?
Yeah.
You guys won.
Yeah.
And you got the W.
Yeah. So the fun thing in our league is that if you get the W and you're the best player, they like take your picture, so like you end up on Facebook.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's nice. So I think I've gotten it 4 times, I think. Where I need that combination of I'm the high scorer and our team won. You could score whatever, all you want, but if you don't win, you're not going to get your picture.
So I really want to get back to some more dad topics, but I want to hear more about this too. So we'll get back to more dad topics. But before we do, what are your personal goals in this league? Are you trying to be MVP? Do you want to be the MVP? Could you be the MVP?
No.
Is there an MVP?
There's a lot of talent in the leagues. Each team actually is really talented. So one thing I'll say is like people that are still playing in their 40s are really good at basketball because they wouldn't you drop something that you're not good at. So someone like,
or you don't have much time, so you got to choose.
Yeah, so they're like me, right? We've been playing for 30 plus years, as you get pretty good at playing a sport that many years. And I don't even I admire what other people can do, and there's a lot of talented people, so I'm not even all that arrogant about what I do.
But you enjoy it, you appreciate it.
Exactly. That
you can still do it. So then, okay, when are you going to retire from basketball, you think?
Good question. I think, just what I noticed without talking to, like, a ton of people, but, like, knees and backs, right? Especially the knees in basketball. Like, a lot of people retire by force. Like, their knees just can't handle the running and jumping that basketball requires. And so people are forced into retirement. Besides all the family and career, obligations. Yeah. It's just the body won't do it. So I'll probably play until the knees give out, I think is what's going to happen.
So even if, what if you start to suck? Like, what if you're no good? What if you, like, your body still technically works, but you lost...
I'll never suck, Sean. So it's when the body gives out. No, I believe in myself too much for that. Like, actually, I've had games that I feel like I sucked, and it's very discouraging. But then, like, powered through it. I'll teach my daughters. I'm like, Daddy had a really bad game last week. I missed a lot of easy shots, and then the next week I was like MVP. Like, I'm like that, and that I'm preaching to myself and to my kids. Yeah. Like, look, you stick it out. You don't just quit. Like, you don't know, like, your next best game could be around the corner. Yeah. I've gone into games like, I was so bad last week. And then, it's happened where, like, literally I have a really good game after a really bad game.
That's a good pivot. It's a good pivot back to basketball. I know you as a basketball player, and that being a big part of who you were growing up, and, like, not just your schedule, but also, like, your identity as well. You were always very good at it. And so now what I'm curious to know is what that's like then for you coaching your daughter specifically, not just the team, but your daughter specifically. You have a lot of insight into basketball. You obviously have a lot of insight into her as a person, and so whether that be just because you've known her whole life, or even more so to the degree that you know her because she's like you in a certain way. So, like, what is that like coaching this daughter of yours?
It actually presents a lot of challenges. So I coach and I have them doing basketball or sports because I love it so much, but I didn't realize, like, how the challenge of it is like wanting to push them, right? And, like, I just talked about, like, perseverance and learning life lessons through sports, but, like, the kids often don't like to be pushed by their own parents. Like, they don't like to hear that, It doesn't sink in, like, oh, okay, Dad, you had a bad game, you had a good game. It's like, no, I have a bad game and I hate the sport. Like, it just makes me feel bad about myself. And then, like, I've had to learn, like how much to push, or even like should you push or where to push,
Right.
like, and so even Maureen has and she's not an athletic person, but she kind of knows too. It's like, oh, like see, mommy knows all this stuff too. Just watching you guys play, she knows like what I'm saying, and we're all the parents, we're all saying the same thing. We see the same stuff, but at that kid level, they don't have the ability to see what we see, and maybe don't understand what we understand.
So what have you learned, or where do you feel like you've like in retrospect you've pushed too hard? And also like where have you not pushed hard enough? Where do you feel like you could have or should have pushed harder?
I think my personality is always like on the I push too much side, too aggressive with that, and I've really had to learn the past few years like to pull back on that.
Okay.
Because I see it in myself, and I would like judge other parents like, you push the kid too much, like you're ruining the sport for them. So you think you want them to like that sport? Well, the way to make them quit it is to keep pushing them into that sport.
Okay, so you have always, like for a long time as a parent, you've had this thought, like seeing other parents push their kids too hard to the point where it sucks the joy out of it.
Our weakness, Sean, right, is that since the advantage of being an adult and is also the disadvantage. Like, oh, I know what you could do. Like, I see if my child is at this level, they could be this. If only they did this. And what we're not seeing is that it takes seasoning, it takes time, and at their own pace that they're going to get there. Whereas if we're trying to push them to that level, right? Because in our minds, like, oh, so easy. Like, you should be able to do that, you know? Or why don't you do this, why don't you do that? When they're not ready for that, and their bodies will develop, their coordination will develop when it develops. But sometimes we're too much in a rush to elevate them to
Right. We have a sense of time. What you're saying is we have a sense of the timeline that it's supposed to be.
We could have a poor sense of timeline.
We could have a poor sense of timeline. Yeah.
Where I was like, hey, the kid is 8. It's like, in like 2 years it'll look like that. But right now, that's not going to happen. You pushing is not helping.
So, like, let's talk a little bit. Let's look at this from, I guess, the perspective of your daughter. So, like, when did she start playing basketball? Tell me about her young basketball career. Like, what have been kind of the milestones along the way?
We probably started at like 2nd or 3rd grade.
Okay.
And it was all
2nd grade playing basketball.
Yes.
So how big is the ball? How high is the
they have different. Yeah, exactly. So that's how I know it was around there. It's around 2nd grade because the ball is smaller. There's 3 sizes, I think. Okay. So you're at the smallest size ball. Okay. And then you don't play at the 10-foot rims. You play at the 8-foot rims, which are way easier to get to. And I think 3rd grade or 8 years old, 7 or 8 is when they move up to the 10. Okay. And just thinking back to the early years too, it's like she wasn't good the first year that we did it. And I think it took probably a year and a half where like, whoa, she went from like kind of very average or below average to she became my best player. And it just happened, but it happened on her timing, not on my timing. So I'm like, oh, I know basketball. I'm the coach. The coach's daughter or the coach's son is like really good because their parent is also their coach. But that surprised me. But then see, when she got good, then I probably started applying more pressure. Like, see how good you are? I can make, we can get better. We can get better. Yeah. There's so much more, improvement that we can make.
So let's, okay. Sorry, what else? And where's she at now?
So now she does not like basketball.
Okay, at this present moment, she does not like basketball.
We're kind of forcing her to do it because she has decided that volleyball is her primary sport. And we just kind of negotiated with her, like, since she doesn't want to do a musical instrument or she doesn't want to do voice lessons, then we're like, well, we want a second discipline for you. Okay. So she decided, okay, then I'll do basketball, but by her choice. And I think she hasn't used these words, but she might say, Dad ruined it for me, or like, Dad, Dad makes it not fun. So I think that's what she might say. So, I mean, like,
if she were to indeed say that to you, like, Daddy, I think you ruined basketball for me. Like, you sucked the joy out of it. Like, what do you think you would say?
I would apologize. I mean, that'd be kind of heartbreaking, but I also know it's true. I mean, I was the one that just said it. But I don't know that, right? Just made it through mistakes and through hindsight. You know, I'm like, I meant well.
Yeah.
And then I have to go against my nature of like, hey, I'm trying to do what's best for my daughter. And I'm like, you know, it feels good to be good at a sport, and the sport is not fun when you're not good.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I was like helping her.
Right.
And I may have already, it could come back, and you know, she could have a good season maybe with a different coach and end up liking it again. But
so you're not coaching her now?
Correct. Yeah. So she kind of asked me not to
coach. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, she fired you.
Yeah. So
basically.
Maybe about 6 months ago, she had a season. She really liked her coach, and her coach was really good. She was a female coach. She was she was about like a senior in high school, so she's young, and actually coached really well for a teenager.
She's a senior in high school coach.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't even know it because she was such a good coach, like really technical in the way she was teaching. She must have had good coaching. So anyway, so she had a good experience. But even then, she had a good experience with this coach, and then when it's time to sign up again for basketball, she didn't really want to do it again.
How did that feel? How did that feel? Like, I guess a couple things. One, that she had another coach that she was thriving under and enjoying basketball with. Like, how did that make you feel?
That's tricky. I was very happy that she liked her coach, and I liked her coach too. But then the dad side of me, or the athlete of me, is like, well, and I ended up telling her at the end of the year, you might like Coach Bean, but I got you being the best player on the court. You know, you were scoring buckets.
Yeah.
As me as coach, but you didn't like it.
Yeah.
You know, and now you like it, but it's kind of like a teacher that's not strict.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you kind of need to craft the whip a little bit. So like it's tricky. Because and this is my arrogance too, but I'm truth telling. I'm like, you were scoring a lot.
Yeah.
When you had the ball in your hands and you were being assertive and I was pushing you.
Yeah.
And now that you're with another coach, you like it, but you're actually not playing as well because another coach can't give you the attention that I give you, and doesn't know your game, doesn't know what you're capable of, and you know, this coach doesn't know. I don't even know she knows you're a point guard, that you can be a point guard.
Yeah.
Because part of her nature is that she's not assertive and she doesn't speak up.
Yeah.
But like she can handle and she can drive. You know?
Yeah. Which that coming from you is like what I'm seeing is, you know, this tension that I experience as well. Like you, besides the timeline, like part of having a timeline is also because we think we see the height of their potential, like how great they could be. And what you just said about Alessia, because I know, you know, we've talked about basketball a lot. We talk about basketball like often when we talk. You said she could be a point guard, and that's like you hold the point guard position in very high regard. So that's a very high that's a very high compliment of what you think she could be. Like I asked you the other day, like, could you be point guard? Like, what would you do to be point guard? Do you remember what you told me? I said, yeah. What did you say? I said, what, like, so Brian, what would it take for you to be point guard?
I said, I can't train it. I can't, like, I'm just not a point guard, and I never will be. Because I don't have the handles, the ball control, and the vision to see what's open, you know, to deliver the ball where it needs to be on time, in the right angle, you know, to set up my teammates for success. I don't have it.
Yeah.
So like I play like selfish ball. Like I know when I can get mine, and I'll get it when I can. Yeah. And if not, then I pass the ball. But yeah.
You're like,
but so she had, and I told her, I was like you're being a point guard. You're a good point guard. You're better than me.
Yeah.
Like not only at that age, right? Like if she kept on that trajectory, like you could be a really good point guard. One thing that the basketball speak is like she could go left, or her strong way, like me, but then she could counter right.
She's able to do that?
Yes. So she could cross over or spin move to the right. Because I taught her that. I was like, you have to have that second move.
Yeah.
See, remember you're talking about like knowing my moves? Well, a good player knows, you know, if I could coach my younger version of myself, like you have to have a good counter, and she could do that.
Yeah.
And the last thing that she wasn't, though, is being able to like then find a teammate and feed the teammate. But no, at that age, no girls can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. Like soccer's probably in the same way. Like passing, like seeing what's open,
right?
You know, what's opening.
But the fact that she can like, she has the athleticism, and the decision making ability to even make those moves, is really promising.
Right.
So like, you don't sound like you've given up, really. Like, you sound like you're like waiting. You're waiting for something.
I don't. Again, I don't want to push too much, or I have to like hold myself back, because it's not. I think not good parenting to keep pushing, and I'm just realizing my own fault there, like of just being too pushy, basically.
It's easier to do nothing sometimes, right? Or sorry, it's harder to do nothing.
Yes, yeah, right.
Is what you're experiencing.
Yes, that was very hard. When you watch your kid play sports, like, it's like, oh, good job, good game, you know, you guys lost, you didn't play well, and like not wanting to give them a laundry list of what they did wrong or what they could have done better, right? Yeah. But so
it's hard.
Myself and Marie, we have to.
It's really hard.
Rein it in a little bit. Yeah.
Do you have any like specific moments in your coaching of, like, do you have specific moments, like, if I could go back and take back that moment when I pushed too hard, there's like any one particular moment or two particular moments, or was it more of a general?
No, it's like many moments. Many chirping, like, do this, don't do that, like during the game, after game, during practice, after practice, going to practice, like I can't turn it off. But I'm like that with myself, if you're an athlete, like, you're very critical of your own performance, because I'm like, because I'll tell Leslie, I was like, you need to know what you did wrong. Right. How do you fix it if you don't know what you did wrong? You can't be like laissez, like, so casual about things. Yeah. If you want to be good.
Who is a better sport parent then? Were your parents better sport parents, or are you a better sport parent? And describe how your parents, like, how were your parents as parents who were raising a very athletic young boy. Like, I'll tell you, I remember, and this is great because we go so far back, and I definitely was jealous of you, like your ability to play, like to be so good, but I was also just like, proud to be associated as well. So both, I felt both, and I like competing against you, even though I was probably going to lose. And I sort of learned to embrace that. That was a very good growth thing for me, like as a person, to like not be good, not like to be clearly not as good. And you and I like grew up together, so I was like, we were always together.
That's a lot of maturity on your part, Sean, to be able to have that realization and still be friends with someone.
It was. I mean, I think that I probably just loved, I loved being your friend. I loved playing basketball, and so figured it was maybe in the end not that hard. And still at the end, I still had joy from competing. But it was like I definitely always. So I'm aware of like how good you were even at a young age. Right. So I remember you played flag football, and you were like, basically you were the kid that was like, I think at these really young levels, it's like the game's always won by one kid, soccer, football, basketball. It's like the one kid on the team who gets it, and you were that kid. Like, they would basically just run halfback sweep with you, just give you the ball, and you just score like 5 touchdowns or something like that. So you were I give that little tidbit, you're probably like 10, 11, I roughly remember. So anyways, that's just context. So your parents, here they have this kid who's their son who's a whiz at every sport. I'm sure they knew, and so they had an athlete in their home. So compare them with you. Like, who's the better parent athlete? And what was their approach? How did they handle you as an athlete? I actually don't know the answer to this.
Yeah, I think one, it's like just going back to being a kid and liking sports, is like, I think any kid, right, is gonna like what they're good at. right? You gravitate, like, you want to feel good about yourself, and that's a good thing, and that's why that's the positive side of sports. So that it gives people confidence. Like, I coach these girls because I want to see their growth and help them with that, and then show it to you. Like, before you couldn't do that, and now you can. And like, we're proud of you, and I'm sure your parents are proud of you. Like, to see that instill the growth, especially in girls that don't naturally love sports. You know, to be able to show them tangibly, look at what you're capable of. But anyway, so there's a lot of sports I wasn't good at, right? And then I just didn't play the sports. Like, so I was like, I felt like I had 2 left feet with soccer. Like, I ain't playing that. That makes me feel bad about myself. Golf makes me feel bad about myself. You know, so there are things I don't gravitate towards. But yeah, so the sports that I liked was only because I'm good at it, and it's just positive reinforcement. Okay, because you're like, oh, I'm making buckets, or I'm scoring touchdowns. No, I can't compare the two because so my parents are really hands off, but I had that internal drive, so I didn't need any pushing. Like, you can't push me, like maybe with you in academics, like, you don't need anyone like prodding you, right? Or with your work, like, you're going to push it yourself, right? What would have helped, I see, is money. If my parents were wealthy and they could have put me in these camps. So like my school and me, I was not a wealthy kid, and so sometimes we would play like wealthy schools, and like, dang it, we like, why can't we beat them? Well, you know why? Because they're in club sports. They're like playing tournaments on the weekends. You know, they at these days they would have private coaches, like speed coaches or shooting. They have drill, like basketball coaches that teach you how to dribble, like, you know, step back jumpers, like things that like we don't have. And so one thing I see now as a parent is like, you can actually buy some of this like skill. So that would have been nice. It wasn't available to me. Like, once in a while I would get to go to a basketball camp, but like I just like was kind of inherently good, but it wasn't able to get really good coaching or like a lot of good competition to play against. That sometimes I would see rich kids would get. That's the difference. And then they have confidence. Then they go onto the court, they're playing my high school, and they're like, they're not better than us. But they beat us all the time. So that's one of the hidden advantages or disadvantages that I didn't see as a kid. To a larger, I wanted to bring up like a larger point. So I've seen boys, I'm thinking of Sawyer, I'm thinking of Micah, friends as younger siblings. I'm like, they've got an it factor. You can see it. Like, he can throw he can hit the ball like very effortlessly. He can throw a ball. He's really fast. He's zippy. You know, a lot of burst. But like, I think with athletics and coaching kids, like, one, there's the talent. That's a big part of the, like, a third or a quarter of the pie. But there's like the parental support. Financial support would help, but then support maybe in a bad way too. Like, the parents, like I said, was being too pushy, and maybe you ruin the sport for the kid. And then the drive of the kid. So there's these things that I see, like, even if I see a 6-year-old, you're like, oh, that could be like a prodigy. A lot has to happen between 6 and 18, and they may not get to the finish line of like elite athlete that's going to play college ball because their parents ruined it, or the parents didn't have the financial support to help them through it, or the kid, you know, is too lazy. Like, there's like kind of a lot of, there's a reason why certain kids are special athletes, because everything, a confluence of factors that brought that kid to high school level, and now they shine, you know. But there's a lot of little steps that had to happen, or things to not go wrong too, right? Of why that kid became so amazing.
Okay, that was part 1 of my interview with Brian. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Let's get to part 2, which, as you'll notice from the background noise, took place at the airport in Austin. I also wanted to ask, because I know you have a lot of thoughts about money. Like, I've known you our whole life, and I've always felt like you have a very good, practical mind and way to think about things, which is why a lot of times, like, when I will ask you for your opinion on things, because it really kind of cuts past a lot of noise that maybe tends to distract me. So I just wanted kind of like, how are you thinking about money these days? You know, how have you evolved in your kind of relationship to money? And money is just an interesting topic in general. As a dad, like, you have, it plays a different role naturally, I think, because you've got a family. Mm-hmm. And it's a necessary thing to figure out in some way. So
mm-hmm.
what's kind of your latest thoughts on money?
Yeah, in terms of like being a dad and parenting, I think it's important to like for the kids to have some financial literacy, like, because I'm not going to be around forever, and they need to know, like, have a competency, like, oh, I know I can handle my bills, I know how to save, like, I'm going to be okay, right? So it's like you can leave them with like actual hard cash assets, or you can actually teach them this is how to do it, and you're going to be fine, so I think that's an important part of the legacy, is that they're responsible with their finances. So no matter what income level you are, you have to be good at that. And I think that's a skill that I want to slowly, again, age appropriate, teach so that they get it. And that's a big life lesson that I think, like, I, for example, didn't learn really till maybe college, like being an economics major. Then they like you learn stuff like, oh, that's neat. And then like everyone needs to learn this stuff, right? But it's like home ec or whatnot is not taught anymore. So have you been able? You say age appropriate, so maybe there hasn't been much yet that you can share, or that you've found that you're able to share. But have you shared some things? I think we've like tried to, but I just think there's certain concepts that they can't or won't understand, like compounding interest or savings for retirement. Like I think it's too heady, too big. It's too theoretical. Too impractical to teach a child that they're thinking about their growth and being a teenager, like, right? So they have no concept of what 30 years from now looks like, 40, 50, 60 years.
I agree. Probably too much for them to digest. Compounding interest,
so
and other concepts. But what about, do they have an allowance?
Yeah, so we talked about that this year. We had a family friend that was like, oh, you could do family allowances like your age, let's say 8 years old, so $8 a week. Okay. And then that was just kind of someone made that up. But then we're like, well, but our 8-year-old has no expenses. So we intended to give her $8 a week, but it's like she doesn't have anything to spend it on, And like, so, but then my 11-year-old, now, like, she walks home from school, and they might stop at the grocery store, or she might get a smoothie, and she can actually burn through that cash. And then it's good, and she gets to rewarded for doing her chores and learning something about scarcity of it. Like, hey, she has Apple Cash. Yeah. I was like, oh, shoot, I only have $5 left. Like, right. So at least they're seeing... She has to feel... something. They're seeing the subtraction, addition, $11 a week, and then she's seeing the minus. So, which is good. That alone, that arithmetic is kind of good to see. Right. And she could see how far her dollar goes. Correct. Yeah. And so, yeah. So how long has she had an allowance for? We just started a few months ago. Yeah. Okay. But it's been great because, like, I saw them at the store, and they they had actual cash. Yeah. But then they ended up with all this change. And it's like, oh, this is a mess. Yeah. So we learned, like, just do the Apple Cash, and everyone accepts it. Okay. And I can, shoot it to her phone. She asks for it if I forget, and then I, just do it digitally, and then it's easy. Yeah. And then I can see what she's spending. So what are you seeing so far? Do you have a sense for, is she, does she sort of have a taste for the finer things already, or is she, really thrifty like her dad? She would be, but when she sees the constraint, it's like, oh, I have X amount in my account, then it's like it forces you to be like, oh, I can't just get whatever I want. Right. And that's the point, right? All right. But like previously, because I kind of gripe about my in-laws, like their way of love is just buy it for them, buy it for them. I'm like, and that shows love in a sense of like, oh, my grandparents buy me everything. But my problem with that is like, but it doesn't teach them anything. It teaches them actually that it's just easy, like you just get what you want. Right. And then that's a bad habit that I don't, even if we had the money, like I sometimes say no just because they need to know that the answer's not always yes. Yeah. I'm going to bring you into the toy store just to exercise this muscle of hearing no and us walking out of here. Yeah, but sometimes you don't get everything you want, right? But then with grandparents, often they like to spoil, and so it's always, the answer's always yes. They never say no. Yeah. Like they have no concept of like, you know,
Right.
what's this doing to them long term.
Right. Yeah.
So I do appreciate, obviously, their love of giving and the
Yeah.
generosity. But I'm like, and that maybe their job is to love that way, but my job is to teach.
Yep. No, totally. Maybe we grab your bag. I think that his wife might sit there. I can put it here.
Okay,
If you want.
yeah.
I feel the same way. I try to, make sure that they don't just get whatever they want. But with the grandparents, I'll use the grandparents to like spoil them, because of course I do want to spoil them, but I want them to experience being spoiled like in a different sleeve. Like this is just the special grandpa treatment. Like, you don't expect this from me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're getting away with something, that's because you're with him.
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell my dad, like, go ahead, like, spoil them, get them what they want, because I'm the one to say no. They get plenty of no from me. Let's get yes. They can get yes from you.
Cool. Yeah. And that actually builds a bond or love that for grandpa.
Right. Then they can. Yeah, that's special. That's special. So, but another thing too, that I want to get your thoughts on are, with regards to money, because what you just described, you have an intention of helping your kids understand the constraints of money, right? How money works, what it's like to have money, even a small amount of money, and just to get a first-hand experience with it so that they can understand it. But then when you and I were growing up, I think our parents probably had some real constraints. Like, it wasn't a choice. You have a choice. You could spoil your kids, and
Correct.
you could buy them whatever they ask for, whatever sweet or toy that just happens to pass in front of them. Our parents probably had some real constraints. So, like, how do you think about that? Like, why, like, maybe if our parents had that kind of money, maybe they would have spoiled us more. But compare, I guess, the challenge for you of teaching money versus the challenge that your parents had.
Yeah.
And maybe give a little background, like your parents, what was the financial situation for your family growing up?
Yeah. So I think we grew up like lower middle class. It's probably where we were. So right, and so in a way, sort of, it's kind of easier. Like, it's like, oh, we don't have money, so the answer is no, you can't have that. And then, oh, if we can afford it, then yes, you can have it. And it kind of makes sense for the parent and the child. Like, oh, I get it. Like, we don't have a lot of money, and so often the answer is no. And it's not that, oh, you have it and you're withholding. Like, that actually feels worse. If the child knew that would feel worse. But if the child understands that, oh, we there's a lot of things we don't have that we don't get that other people get because we ain't rich, and they kind of know that, right? But now, what happens if you're upper middle class, upper class? Then you're like, shoot. Then my big fear is that, what if the standard of living, right? What if our kids cannot match our standard of living?
Right.
Okay, and it's going to be a letdown for them.
Right.
So for me, it's the opposite. It's like I've told you, Sean, like, my life is like far exceeded my upbringing. So everything is gravy, everything is awesome. I love it. But if it was the opposite, I can imagine that doesn't feel good. Be like, hey, I'm used to a certain standard of living. So that's why I like try not to. That's why that lifestyle creep is kind of dangerous, because it's like, even though we can afford it, it's weird. Like, let's say maybe Maureen and I, if we went to a nice dinner, but we're going without the kids.
Yeah.
Because they won't appreciate a nice dinner, but like, we may appreciate the luxuries or finer things in life, but I'm like kind of sheltering them from that.
Right.
Then because of my fear of like, I don't want, because if they want to be like a teacher, like, then I want you to be a teacher and not be like, oh no, I can't do that because it doesn't make as much as what I'm used to, what my parents used, like, so then that I fear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I want to keep them at like a reasonable standard of living, so that it may not be a big letdown if they don't have a high income, high paying job.
I could definitely relate to that. I think in a way, what I'm hearing you say also is like the constraints that you lived under, sort of the financial reality that you lived under growing up, lower middle class, are kind of a gift in a way. Like it gives you the ability to enjoy kind of the things that come with a better financial situation, which is what you are in now compared with where you were growing up. And so now you have to, like, if that's a gift, and you basically, like, you put it in terms of fear. I'll put it in terms right now of, like, you're trying to give your kids the gift of that feeling. Like, you get to enjoy and appreciate what you have.
Yeah. So I would like, I'm trying to avoid a step down in life for them. That, my adulthood is a step down from my upbringing. I just imagine that'd be a crappy feeling. So I'll share, like, my father-in-law. So he grew up like dirt poor in the Philippines, and so he always views it as a negative. Okay, like, that was awful. I don't want my grandkids to feel that way. So I've got money, and so I'm gonna burn it. Like, I'm gonna use it.
Yeah.
They want it, they're getting it. I'll buy 2 of them if they ask for 1. But I'm like, I see his upbringing as a positive in his life.
Yeah.
Because it caused him to make really good choices and work hard to get to where he is now in retirement. But, like, would that have happened? I know everyone's different.
Right.
But, like, that silver spoon could be like a curse. And that, that struggle as in early life is a blessing.
Yeah.
It can be a blessing, depending on how you see it. So I know I see it differently. I look at it like we need some, I think of the term called forced scarcity. So it's like manufactured scarcity is what we would have to do.
Yeah, and so we have to be deliberate about it. Yeah, it is. That's an additional wrinkle. And I think so. What's your sense of their understanding of their family finances? Like, do you think your older one has an understanding of, are you guys middle class, rich, or does she have a sense, you think?
I think so. I think they hear a lot, or they catch a lot of what Marina and I talk about, and I'm pretty pleased with what I hear from them. Like I don't hear like entitlement or that they're spoiled or like I'm comfortable with where their headspace is at and their knowledge up to this point. So so my fears of them, like, for example, like if they wanted something extravagant, like we would laugh out loud, like that's crazy, So it's like trying to like temper their grand delusions of this like fancy lifestyle. Yeah. And we'll tell them, like, when we were growing up, like, we didn't have this and this and this, and,
Yeah.
I stayed at a Motel 6 or whatnot. You know what Motel 6 meant? So, like, when they want fancy hotels, things like that, like, just trying to ground them a little bit.
Right.
And they get it. Yeah.
How are you different as a dad versus how your dad was a dad? Like, what do you see as the differences, or like what was he like as a dad to you? Like, how do you, like, looking back, how do you think he operated? What mattered to him?
I think I had a great dad. So I think probably a lot of what I do, I didn't really realize till he asked me, is like I probably emulate a lot of what his style was in terms of teaching and loving and caring for us. Trying to have fun and, be your friend, but be your dad, be a father figure at the same time. Be a spiritual leader. So I try, it's hard. Like I know I don't. I just try my best, and that's all I can do.
No, that's.
But like the challenges, like I didn't see it with my dad, but I know like previous generation, like men were not as like touchy-feely or very communicative. But I think my dad always was, so I didn't have that. But I know there's a coldness that used to be there.
Especially our culture, like East Asian culture, obviously our dads have a shared background, both grew up in Singapore, and I think interestingly, what you talk about, like kind of basically affection, traditionally for sure in Chinese culture, dads are not showing affection, but then both of our dads were actually pretty affectionate guys. Like I kissed my dad goodnight every night growing up, and hugs and I love yous and stuff like that. So we were kind of fortunate. And one time my dad explained to me like how he was kind of like just on the other side of a cultural dividing line, where just a few years prior, maybe he would not have been the type of dad to show affection. So my uncle, my dad's older brother, not an affectionate dad, but my dad, younger, more Western influence in his life. He went to, during his education in Singapore, he did go to a Catholic school at some point. So he had that kind of that Western influence just on the other side of that dividing line, invisible dividing line in history. So both of our dads were kind of on that side, kind of affectionate dads. Is there a dad, and maybe in particular, not necessarily, maybe in particular, like a dad you've met just barely in passing, or dad you've seen even from afar, that you're like, you've been impressed with that dad's dad game? And tell me about this dad. What is it that you admire about this dad?
I'll share. I thought about that last night because I remember you were saying you wanted I'm going to refer my friend Grady to you.
Okay.
He's a father of 2 sons, and I've heard him say it a couple times when like he's been complimented, like, "Oh, Grady, you're such a good dad." He's like, it's because it's such a low bar, like, or like people have such a low bar for dads, and so like basically like, I'm just a normal dad, but then people think that's a good dad, and he's minimizing his dadness.
No, go ahead. Yep.
He's minimizing his dadness, but people see in him like, hey, you're a good dad. You're very involved. I think that's probably what they like about him. He also has an occupation. He's like an illustrator. Okay. And so his like work flexibility.
Okay.
So I think he can, be more involved with his kids, like with sports and other things. I think he'd be receptive to talking to you.
Awesome. So, like, paint a picture for me of like, obviously you don't know, you probably don't know like all the details of what Grady's kind of dad life is, but what do you imagine he's doing? Like, how do you think he gets the job done? How do you think he gets his dad job done?
Well, okay, I think because he's first of all, he's very likable. He's like, we live in a small town, and it's like if you're like hanging out with him, like people are always saying hi to him because he's got this big beard. He's very recognizable and friendly, gregarious, warm person, which is kind of atypical for a man. Like he's not like stoic and like unapproachable. He's like kind of a happy-go-lucky, friendly dude, neighborhood guy. But I think what maybe people see in him is like he plays Mr. Dad role, Mr. Mom role, like meaning sometimes they see things in him, and I think that's why they point it out. He's a really good cook. He'll like whip up dinner for his family, and then like,
that's awesome.
Gosh, that's exactly, that's awesome.
That's
he's
awesome.
Like, and he's like, no, I cook pasta that I like, and so he'll like kind of downplay it. But yeah, just taking care of maybe duties that are maybe more traditionally female, or a mom
thought of that way.
Yeah, and so then people catch it, and then they want to like praise him for that.
Yeah.
And just they try to compliment him, and then,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and his deflection is like, it's people think so lowly of dads.
Right.
That's fine. I'm just average.
Yeah, there's a lot of dads doing some really good work out there. Like you, you're doing good work. So we're now, like Grady says, we're just average. I look forward to meeting Grady. So just one more thing then about, just since we're talking about this dad, I think it's just great for dads to take time to recognize other dads and the great job they're doing. Like, what's something about Grady that you're like, I want to emulate, or I'd like to add that to my playbook as a dad, or I hope I can do more of that? Is there anything specific that you want to emulate with him?
I think maybe just being present and spending time with your kids, making time. So we know our time's short, and they grow up so fast. So it's like, just your presence is important. Being there, showing up, and being consistent with that. So I think being selfless with your time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. No, that's a great one to emulate. All right. Anything else you want to?
We covered a lot, Sean.
We covered a lot.
I'm going to turn the mic on you.
No. That's why I'm doing this, because I don't want to answer these questions and make everybody else answer these questions. Okay, episode 1 of the Dad Bod is in the history books. Thank you to everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode and that it brought a little something positive to your life. Special thanks once again to today's guest, Brian, Coach Girl Dad, for sharing his story. If you like what we're trying to do with the Dad Bod, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app and post up a positive review. If you know a dad who would be great for the show, go to thedadbodpod.com and tap the refer dad button. Thanks again for listening.